Hi everyone, and welcome to a new episode of T- Podcast. Today we have Matt. He is a product and tech lead at Solana Foundation. Welcome to the podcast.
Hello, thanks for having me.
Matt, before we start, maybe would you like to have a quick introduction of yourself and what Solana Foundation is?
Yeah, so Solana Foundation is the entity that really spearheads the decentralization efforts of the chain. You know, it's decentralization is a journey and, evolution, because by definition, you're going to start with just a couple of people making the chain. And so it's really a kind of spearheading that decentralization effort, eventually just becoming fully like detached. And part of doing so, it has a relationship with Solana Labs, which at this point is the core contributor to what people know as the Solana network. That is actually changing, by the way. Jito just announced that they will also be producing a client. So that's something that we help them with. We're excited that they decided to do that. And so my org really both supports those efforts, but then all the ecosystem. And then I guess a little bit about me. I just have a long career in tech. Worked in games for a little while. Started two companies. The first one was in cryptocurrency, a little early, for a consumer app in cryptocurrency in 2017. Second one is a rather successful hearing aid company. We're doing direct consumer hearing aids, and the regulatory approval just actually went in America to allow for that. So that's really good. And so joined Solana about a little over a year ago to really accelerate the ecosystem.
You mentioned before you were joining Solana, you were working already on crypto. Your experience at the beginning was on Ethereum. Is that correct?
Yep. Correct.
So when you kind of arrive and you find out about Solana, what kind of changed your mind on, maybe working on crypto and building something on it?
Yeah. When I was first doing it, I was very excited about the tech. It's kind of like one of the generational tech pieces. I think machine learning, which was my previous career, was the other one. And so I was really excited about it. I wanted to see where it could go. And I kind of just came to the determination that, while it is this great tech, it's just not necessarily ready for consumer apps. So it's not scalable. There's a lot of frictions, and the consumer protections aren't there yet. Not that it was never going to get there. It just wasn't there yet. So I would just wait till those pieces kind of got built out. So I did have the option of building those pieces, but I just didn't really think that was exactly what I wanted to do for a business. So, and then this hearing aid thing came along. So and that's really, really satisfying, and that was definitely a passion project for me. And then when I decided to move to an advisor of Contra Labs, I started just looking around at the different scaling solutions that would fix the problems of not being ready for, consumer-based apps. And I saw that there were a couple of options now with varying trade-offs. And I don't know if we can get into it, but I just thought that Solana was definitely solving the right problem, and had the best chance of having just awesome long-term apps as well. So that's kind of why I'm here.
Would you say if you maybe want to walk us to the trade-off you see that maybe Solana is better compared to any other chains that are, at least at the moment, available out on the market? Yeah,
sure. So I think the main thing is that Solana is the only chain that's scaling with parallel compute, and basically being able to make it the runtime just super efficient. I guess that's the high level way of saying it. And I think other chains are fragmenting really early, which is going to it's basically going to, my presumption is going to create the situation that it's hard to upgrade those individual pieces, because everybody's going to have their own individual validator set and a bunch of nuances to actually figure out how to scale each individual. It's better to really concentrate on scaling your single shared state. And the network effects that can come from that are just immense. And especially when Solana also has some really nice tools for composability across programs, that I think that just, the ecosystem effects are just going to really show themselves. They're already showing themselves, even just things like Metaplex, and then things built on top of Metaplex which is the NFT standards. You can start seeing a lot of really interesting things around renting, lending, wagering, tournament structures, community-based tools. And so I think that's just going to get more and more pronounced on this like shared ecosystem. And what's really neat about it is if it ever got to the point where, you really started having like billions upon billions of users and you needed to have like multiple chains or something like that, Solana will prove that it can reach that scale of that, as opposed to, now on like the fragmented versions, if an app really starts going really well, you're kind of in this state congestion pretty quickly, if you haven't solved the scaling issue. So that's why I'm excited about this problem. I think they're both good problems, but I think this is the one that I think has the highest benefit to,
absolutely. What I see, I remember I saw a conversation the other day, and this person is an engineer, and they say there is no best chain, there is nothing that is perfect. It's only a matter of trade-off. So it all depends probably how you reach that. And do you think? Yeah, go ahead.
I will say that I think that is true, but I also think that it makes it. I think there's a presumption that Ethereum versus Solana must have given. Ethereum does a couple 100,000 transactions today. Solana does 41 million transactions today. Clearly, Solana had to sacrifice a lot, and I think that assumes. Solana is built from the ground up with just some engineering improvements. It's nothing to do with the trilemma or intense trade-offs. It's honestly just things that are optimized from computer science and cryptographic primitives. So I do want to just say that there is a distinction there. Some things are just engineered for their applications specific better than others. Like Ethereum is inherently single-threaded and has some performance characteristics around the way that it does its computation that aren't that computationally efficient. So that's part of the reason why Solana didn't go EVM right away. So there's some things that aren't necessarily trade-offs. It's just better engineering. And I'm not trying to say that like Ethereum is bad engineering. It's just they're optimizing for developer experience and like an easier programming language. But to the end user, if this programming language, there isn't a trade-off to the end user. It's just to the developer.
Absolutely, yeah, that's right. It's at the end the user doesn't really care what chain you're using. They just need the product to work properly. Mm-hmm. Would you say that layer 2 can kind of help with what Ethereum is struggling with, or will create just additional complexity on what's going on?
It does definitely create additional complexity of, users understanding where their data is or their assets is. I think there's the whole span of L2s is an interesting space, how they do it. I think a lot of people are raving about the ZK rollups. So, because most of the other rollup types have this problem where they're essentially just side chains, where there's not really a connection to the L1. You can commit a hash where you can kind of prove that your history was not tampered with, but that's about it. You can't really prove that the data is correct at any given time, or that the consensus, like the computation was even done correctly. So the shared security is a little bit tenuous. I mean, it just shares that you can't manipulate the state. The one that people are really excited for because it fixed that problem is the ZK rollups. That adds in a lot of computational complexity. You have to do the original computation, and then you have to do a proof on top of that. And so I think there's just a lot of questions as whether that's going to end up being more efficient. The other thing is that because you have to do so many steps, it puts a lot of burden on the computation piece and the proofs to happen quickly, or else you're going to have a bad user experience for that to actually be resolved. So you end up having even more just like really intense consolidation. All the ZK ropes that I know of, they're sequenced in a single sequencer. So it's like just extremely centralized. And so at some point, like, sure, the proofs that can be put down to the L1. So the proofs, I don't know how technical this audience is supposed to be, but basically the proofs allow for data availability. As the user, I can show the L1 that I have this thing with these proofs. And that's what the whole point is. Like with a ZK is that you can have more not just security of the L1, where the L1 actually can, recognize your asset as owned as opposed to not have see any visibility, which is most of the other options with L2s. But in order to produce that, you just have to, all the ZK ropes I know of today are just single sequencers, so like a single entity. And so there's a, security risk upstream, which is, that single sequencer can decide the ordering. So there's censorship resistance concerns and a bunch of things. So yeah, you can understand that the math is correct. You can prove that the math was correct, but like, did they even try to solve the right math is an open question that nobody's really validating in those models. So I don't know. There's definitely some trade-offs there that have to be fixed, but it's software. I have no doubt that it's going to get better and better over time. But as Anatoly likes to say, like, we're not really sure if they're solving the right problem. It seems to be like upstream of the right problem, and they're kind of skipping a step in terms of like being overly centralized and adding a bunch of overhead in the wrong area. Why not just have a much better runtime, and then figure out a validator set configuration where you can get enough validator and stakes. Because think about it this way: if you have all these fragmented sequencing ZK ropes and stuff, you have to figure out how to get enough stake to those so where they're valuable enough, or else any given point of that is able to either be attacked by a stake or you don't have the right validators to do all the proofs and stuff. So you start like really expanding how you have to do the computation on it. But if you just have a really efficient runtime that can scale arbitrarily horizontally with the number of cores, then you can have a security because you can have more computers involved, because each computer or that state is handling so many more transactions now. So if you're trying to handle, like, think about this, if you're trying to handle 1 million TPS, if you only have to divide that by like 2 or 3 states, like that's much easier to do, and still maintain like a lot of different entities validating that, as opposed to if you have to separate that into 100,000, then you have 100,000 different points of failure, which is what we're concerned about that model. Now, that being said, anybody can commit a ZK rollup to Solana if they want to. It's permissionless. It's just not something that we ourselves are concentrated on.
Yeah, that's right. You create many points of failure, and maybe it's just overcomplicating something that is not really required. In your position, when you see maybe outside company that are not crypto native, and they come to you, they want to build on Solana, what kind of their issue, what they struggle with?
Well, I mean, I think they think they're going to struggle with Rust coding, but because of these composability parts that I was saying earlier, most people actually don't even need Rust code to deploy a very compelling app. Like, so Steppen was able to use SPL tokens for their tokens, Metaplex built on top of that for their NFTs, and then a company called Orca for their swaps. They didn't have to deploy any on-chain code to deploy Steppen. It was just APIs. They didn't have to do any Rust. So part of it is just walking them through that and seeing what they want to produce, and like what they can still put custom stuff on that top of that if they want, which would require Rust code today. But actually, there's also a Python extraction, by the way. That was new. That's pretty exciting. But it's really just walking them through that design choices, where like anywhere in software, there's always a time to market, complexity of your product. Also when you're trying to find product market fit, how flexible is your offering? So it's a lot of that, talking about that. And I think there's a lot of cases where Solana is a really good choice.
Yeah. Would you say that it's it's just faster and you don't really have to, build everything from the ground up if you build on Solana? Well, if you do on the other chain, you just have to do everything by yourself, even if it's just a copy paste, but still.
Yeah, but even a copy paste usually requires an audit, just because you're changing just enough that you need an audit for your contract. So you don't need to do that on Solana. And so it makes it a lot easier to quickly ship and iterate, which I think is part of the reason why Solana has basically the only chain that I know of that has multiple really successful consumer apps, not just marketplaces, but actually just consumer apps like Steppen, Chingari, Star Atlas in a lot of ways, and Kin, Audius. I can go on. They have we have multiple in different categories successful consumer apps.
Yeah, that's right. that people maybe don't really, might be like their first step into crypto. They don't even realize they're using cryptocurrency in a sense, if it's built if it's built right enough. What would you say is the kind of next catalyst that will bring maybe a lot of millions of people to blockchains?
Yeah, so I think the ones that we've seen bring people on, like from outside of crypto, is something that has an incentive for them to do so. The issue for that is those have largely been not sustainable models. Call them whatever term you want, but if you're yielding a token to people to play and that token has value, that has been the catalyst. Now, I think you can do that, but also have a sustainable model, because you can just pay people for adding value. But that second part is the part that hasn't existed yet in a really appreciable way, except for like with NFTs, actually. So what NFTs do is they provide somebody the value of digital swag, and then it allows you to pay somebody around the world permissionlessly. And so you start this economy around, digital communities and digital swag, and a bunch of explorations around what those mean. Obviously, there's some mania in there, but those models don't require somebody else coming in and paying you in order for you to get the good you want. You're getting digital swag in a community. Hopefully people don't only go into it because of mania. It does exist today, but I think the next generation is things that don't even have that as part of the equation. I pay for a service, and that person who I'm paying gets paid with way less frictions through cryptocurrency. So to give you an example that are coming out right now, Hive Mapper is there's a dashboard cam that takes images while you drive. You get paid in some token that's on Solana. I think they're called a Hive token. And then other people like self-driving cars or whoever is going to use an API and take those images, because those are really valuable images. It's hard to get that data set. So you just have people driving around and getting paid for it. And there's no weird tokenomics or whatever. There's strictly an economy around buy and sell, and everybody can see why that economy was created. I can see as the user, somebody else using that API or whatever it is, and why I got paid or why I didn't get paid. And so that model, I think, is a very base of an economy that is going to potentially have things flourish. And it's really cool that that's already seen in the real world through something like Hive Mapper, because I think you're going to see it even more in video games. So instead of people just paid to play, which I think is selling a false promise, saying just to play, I think is, I worry a lot about that language. I can totally understand why the average consumer is pretty miffed by the whole thing. But if you just change that around a little bit, instead of just play, it's a specific thing that is adding value. So the Roblox example is the pinnacle where you're actually doing scripting and stuff, but there's plenty of games that can offer in-game offerings that are players are creating things, but they don't require them to code, Minecraft, they just stopped selling NFTs. But one of the things that is really cool about being able to do Minecraft NFTs, you can make a house. Maybe you can NFT that house, and then you can sell it to somebody else. Somebody else doesn't want to build that house. It takes a lot of time to build some really complex things. Or, if somebody makes a Star Trek Enterprise real life model in Minecraft, and you can sell that. And so surely both of the people are playing at that moment, and somebody's earning by that play, but it's not like this. There's a very obvious input output here. So that doesn't require somebody else to also believe in some sort of hype factor. It's literally just somebody wants the enterprise in Minecraft form. Somebody else gets it. So there's going to be things like that generate, I think, in games pretty quickly, because you have these entirely digital assets and kind of toy problems. By toy problems, I mean games are definition, these fun environments that have certain characteristics around them. And if some people find them valuable, which, shocker, a lot of people do. The games industry is already $220 billion industry. So you just add some economy around that. So the game developer just gives up a little bit of control, and then the communities can start forming that, create these economies. And I think that is shown in a lot of the bear markets to be a pretty bear resistant thing, because it's fun and it's not as expensive. It's completely digital. And it's really low friction to get into.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. It's all about creating value. Like there is no, it's not because it's a crypto, then we just create new form of money. We need to create value, and we need to give a reason, to pay and spend for this stuff. Do you think there are a specific subsector that you see maybe thriving in the next in the coming years?
Yeah, definitely games. I think games in the gig economy, and I think games usually is probably going to lead the charge, because like being able to have the constraints on the environment that you're doing the thing, I think is really helpful when you're doing initial explorations. Games leads like things like, I don't know, hardware requirements. Like graphics cards exist today because of games, not because of machine learning, GPU processing, or because of cryptocurrency mining, and this because of games. A lot of like community organization or online communication tools, and like Slack, for example, started out of a games company. There's a lot of innovation that happens because, especially digital innovation, that happens because of games. So I think that's probably going to see where you start a lot of these things, and then people apply them to other industries.
Definitely. I want to ask you, what was your favorite game, or what is your favorite game at the moment?
Okay. My favorite game of all time. I mean, I worked for Riot Games for 4 years, so it's hard not to say League of Legends in some ways. But I both love and hate it, just like everybody else. And then I think my favorite game I'm playing right now is this stupid, I shouldn't say stupid. It's a brilliant game, but it's like a very simple game that I play with my friends from high school. It's called Warzone.com. Very much not Call of Duty Warzone, which they actually got sued. That's a whole different topic. But which is funny because this Warzone.com was Warzone.com, I think, since, I don't want to give the exact date, but quite some time before Call of Duty Warzone was even announced. So it's just a big company attacking a single developer. But anyway, the single developer made this really good. I don't know if you've ever played the board game Risk. He made this like digital version of it, and I play a lot with my friends because my friends and I grew up playing the physical board game Risk, and so it's a way for us to keep in touch. Because I'm in Korea right now, and my friends from high school in Ohio are not in Korea as well. So it's a way for us to keep in touch.
Would you say gaming on Solana? Do you see many different kind of genre coming up? Maybe even like new genre that weren't possible before without blockchain? Or we will see like some sort of, as you say, maybe a League of Legends with, I don't know, NFT skins or something more complex?
Yeah, I think we're seeing a lot of exploration on Solana. Again, because of the integrations, time is pretty easy for just basic NFTs. It allows you to have more time for the other creative aspects. And I think initially, I'll take a step back. Actually, really only got popular about 1.5 years ago, where it got on people's radar. So it's not a lot of time for games take a lot of time. So some games you can kind of retrofit some NFTs and other things, but if you really want to make full use of cryptocurrency, you kind of want to do it from the ground up, and just understandably for capitalizing the project and other things like that, they probably didn't get capitalized until maybe about 1 year ago. So that's why you don't see them today. Everybody just associates crypto games with scams as if that's always going to be the case, as opposed to that being a property of just the a nascent industry. It's just new. I got actually kind of mad at somebody the other day. I was in a PC bong here in Korea, and he's just like, yeah, but all cryptocurrency games have to be bad. I mean, all of the ones I see are bad. I'm like, well, that's because they just started coming out. I don't know. I mean, like the first games you see on any platform are almost always bad, just because the first movers, you move quickly and you don't have a good game yet. But yeah, so we're seeing a lot of exploration, and across, I think the thing I guess I wowould say is that people who are self-selecting into Solana are doing so because Solana is the only place that their app can scale. If the ones that tend to be going on to one of these side chains as a service, which supernets, subnets, other side chain services, those tend to be lighter integrations where you're just like maybe minting a PFP. You're probably not putting your whole economy or other things on chain, or else the side chain is just not going to. It's going to get really expensive per transaction on that side chain once it reaches capacity at around 20 to 60 TPS or whatever those side chains are. So I think on the Solana side, I think people are being more exploratory at the high end because they know their business can scale with it. So that's really interesting for us. I don't know if I can give away. By the way, game industry people are very, very protective over their IP. So I really can't tell you the exact game mechanics that are coming from it. But I will just say it's really robust, and some of it is very, very new, or at least gives more power to the player to augment the old business models that used to be toxic. So I guess I could give an example, like modding, for example. Modding is actually pretty toxic for a game developer. It adds some value to the ecosystem, and maybe if you sell a box sale, then people buy more boxes, maybe. But you're not, especially for the new models where it's all about downloadable content, it's free to play up front. Mods are just people making content and like kind of replacing the money potentially they would have spent on the content you make. But if you have a cryptocurrency economy, then you can have much more easily arrange that into an economic way where the original developer gets a cut. Because I don't know if I'm playing a game that has some sort of modding tool, I actually don't even know how I would possibly pay the developer unless they set it up like a Roblox or a Rec Room or something. But cryptocurrency just makes that much easier. So I think there's some things like that are pretty new that are way more expansive than what Roblox is able to do, I guess. That can be much more decentralized, down to like server hosting and all that stuff. So but there's a bunch of other ones that are less obvious that I can't really talk about.
Yeah, I think game studios have a way, and they have to find a way to, from a side, protect their IP, because it's definitely it's important, what makes a game or any entertainment company strong. And in the other side is more let your user experiment and create new games, add value to your ecosystem and still kind of be in control and take a cut from it. That's absolutely, I can see how crypto can, create more value from it.
Yep. It's all about creating economies. It's like getting out of closed economies that we used to see that in the world. You'd have these like rulers on each of them, and they would close off their economy, and they have to make one-off rules every single time they wanted to trade or do any sort of interaction with any other ecosystem. And you see that in video games, where it's even within the same, like a big studio, that's very rarely any sort of collaboration between them. In cryptocurrency, you can, even without interoperability between games, this is about interoperability with functionality. You open up the economy of ideas and guild tools and community tools and all that stuff, and how people can actually use their assets. You don't necessarily, again, you don't have to solve the problems of interoperability across games, even that has its own slew, but you're getting out of your walled garden, and the economy that takes place there can be much, much bigger.
That's right. I would like to talk now about the mobile phone that Solana released. So when I saw the news, I was like, that's crazy. Why would they do this? The phone, only Solana people are going to buy the phone. Doesn't make any sense. And after a few days, I was thinking about it. I was like, well, maybe there is a reason why. I don't think they're just stupidly building a phone like that. In your opinion, like, what are the, why a Solana phone?
So it's actually because of user experience. I know that people think that we're trying to be, I don't know, there's a lot of different takes, I think I can understand why there's confusion. I think, okay, I'll just go through the user experience of somebody today, both of the developer and the user. So if I'm a developer, I have to choose between either creating my own wallet for my app, or I have to choose interacting with the existing wallet that an interface I have to do, like redirects. I have to redirect to that wallet to get it to sign, then come back to my app with that signature. And it's called like Wallet Connect. There's a few different paradigms for that. In the first one, where I'm making my own wallet, whether it be custodial or non-custodial, like where it manages the keys, that's like a lot of complexity for each app to figure out. So there's security issues. And it fragments the ecosystem. I, as a user, if I want to use multiple apps, I have to create a new wallet each time. So if I have 5 Solana in one app, if I have to make a new app, I'm not going to have that 5 Solana in it, or my assets or anything. So if I have 10 apps, I have 10 different wallets. It's not the greatest user experience. You kind of want to be able to, if I have a credit card, I kind of want to, or if I have a, digital asset. I kind of want to use it across my where I want to. I don't want to have to create a new app. The other one is if you have the wallet. Yeah. So you basically either have this redirect to a single wallet that you can use the assets across, or you fragment your ecosystem. So neither of them was good. And so, or perfect. And it's all these things are pretty unsecure. The keys are stored on the software level encryption. So that has more attack vectors, as we saw with like the Slope wallet being hacked a couple weeks ago, where like Ethereum and Solana keys were leaked. That was because they didn't handle encryption well enough, and some of the keys or seed phrases were leaked in logs. And so that's the picture today. Solana Mobile Stack is really meant to fix essentially all of that. The keys are stored in the secure enclave of the phone, which already exists, by the way. That's not like that part of it isn't new. Your cryptography is the security of the internet today. That blockchains don't own cryptography, but just like the security of your auth and your single sign-on, that can also be done in a secure enclave. It's just at the hardware level, the phone manufacturers need to enable it and have the software there, because the idea is that this doesn't get to interact with anything else or directly with any other app. You can request specific things from it that are already programmed into it. Like you can request a signature, but you don't expose anything in this secure enclave to an actual app. So you can store a key in that and never even worry about that being exposed. So it's very, very secure, for one. And two, because you have the secure layer at the base layer of the phone now, it's at the hardware layer. All the apps just call that same key. So I can choose to have my cryptocurrency across apps. So it fixes both problems, and it's more secure. Who would want that? I know that like we didn't necessarily like it can be some confusion around it, but that's the core principle of it all. The phone that we're producing just makes use of that. And we're producing it with a hardware manufacturer called Awesome, OSOM, and it's a high-end flagship phone. So it's like, that's just great. And the goal there is to, incentivize app builders to create great, now user-friendly apps that are composable with each other across an ecosystem. And if you can kind of just prove that out on some small level with people who get really excited about it, and it's adding a lot of value, then you can get more and more app builders in it. And it's all open source. That's the thing here, is that anybody, Solana Mobile Stack, go on GitHub today, literally like the largest phone manufacturers in the world can enable it if they want to. And so the idea is just to show them that it's valuable for them to do so.
That's right. Yeah, I can see, because right now, for example, if anyone wants to build an application on a phone and just release something, it's a mess. On iPhone, yep. Or you build it through, let's say, you go from MetaMask and then you log in on the website you want to, or otherwise you need like test flight, and it's only limited to maybe like 10,000 people, so it can't scale. Mm-hmm. And they will probably never put your app on the Apple Store because they can't take a cut of it. Would you see maybe like iPhone or some big manufacturer in the medium term shifting and kind of integrating more crypto application on their phone?
Yes, of course. I mean, if you don't believe, if you're in this industry and you don't believe that, you're basically saying that crypto isn't ready for mass adoption. Because how do you get mass adoption if you don't have a big manufacturer having this incentive on the most used platform? So if you're so you're somebody who like still doesn't get like why Solana's phone or something, you're still like incredibly skeptical. It's really that premise. Like, and so kind of maybe rethink the assumptions of why you're scoffing at Solana for doing that, because, all we're trying to do is create open software for the entire industry to use and mobile industry to use to get mass adoption on a platform. And the other thing that's cool about this, the way as described, it's actually more secure in a lot of ways than storing keys on your PC, because your PC is also storing it in encryption, but it doesn't have a secure enclave in the same way as your phone does. It's just your PC tends to be more secure because you're not like carrying around or whatever. But this is like an incredibly secure way of doing it. It's actually similar to Ledger. I don't think it's as secure as Ledger in a lot of ways. We can get into that, but it's still very secure, especially relative to today's standard.
Yeah, so
Yeah,
would
so
it
it
would be
still is,
similar to have like a cold wallet with you that you can actually use it very easily on application on your phone.
Yep, it's essentially yeah. So eventually, like you have all these things there, and so there's a presumption that I've been thinking about a lot is that people say people don't really care about security until it's too late, like the average consumer, or that the average consumer doesn't care about decentralization. I think both of those things can be true, but the conclusion they're trying to imply from that doesn't need to be true. So the conclusion that they're trying to imply is that some chain that isn't very centralized is or isn't very decentralized is just going to take over because it's going to be better. And then there's and that a bunch of people are going to get scammed because they're not actually worried about security. So I would say that it doesn't take an entire populace to believe something. We're going to get kicked out. In a couple minutes. Okay. But it doesn't take an entire populace to believe something. It just takes the influencers. And the influencers clearly care about both decentralization and security. That's why, like, if you just look at where all the volume is, it's on Ethereum and Solana because we're the most decentralized networks. Ethereum will yell at us, like the Solana network for being centralized, but they're just saying that relative to them. And Solana is even more decentralized than Ethereum in some metrics. Certainly not all, but. Solana is certainly more centralized or decentralized than the single sequencer or a lot of the, other L1s and L2s. They have their own decentralization journey. Maybe they can eventually get there, but I think that's a pretty strong signal that the consumer really cares about decentralization.
That's right. Let's see how everything develops at the end. Because decentralization, yes, as you said, maybe people don't really care until it's too late. And same for security. Yeah. When I saw the other day about, it was a few weeks ago about Slope wallets getting hacked. Everyone was saying, here you go, another Solana app is getting hacked because it's centralized, blah, blah. But even though it's actually a measure of decentralization because it's something that we didn't control, there's nothing the protocol can do. The protocol is just incorrectly signed the keys. So it's kind of funny how those so like you can both have that where the average consumer can think that this means something, but there's still so much economic activity on Solana because the people who do know and do have a lot of assets are I don't correct me valuing, but like feeling more secure than they would on a more centralized system. It's like there's no single entity. Like the Nakamoto coefficient is 31 today. It takes a lot of collusion to actually mess with the assets that I'm operating on chain. So. And there's a lot of people who are influential has a lot of value on that. So it's the same thing with the phone is that if you have people who are influential, who are very interested in this kind of paradigm where they have a more secure phone and they have apps that make a lot more sense because there's also a no-fee app store that's coming along with the Solana mobile stack. And so they see all these things that just make sense for the stack. It just makes those influential people moving over and then it'll move the industry because that's kind of who people follow. So it doesn't necessarily mean that everybody following those influential people who, and app builders, by the way, that's the other part of this. If I'm making a really good app that I want to think like, where does that have the most room to run? I'm putting that on the platform that's going to set me up for success the most. I don't want to be beholden to some centralized system or something that's insecure. So I'm going to produce it on Solana mobile stack. That's the bet. I don't, it's a big bet in some ways because the phone industry is pretty entrenched, but that's why we're using a stock Android flagship device and pricing it well. So there's that's the go to market. But overall, if we can prove out that thesis that influential people and people who really understand crypto are going to really care about this movement because they see it as a necessary piece, it can move. You can move an industry with a relatively small amount of people. Yeah, I agree. Like you have like a beautiful device. You basically have a secure hardware where developers can create their own apps, and in that case, you actually force if one of these apps actually succeed very well, you force old manufacturer, which can be Android, Apple, to now accept this kind of application because they're just losing money not having them.
And it's really not that hard to implement, by the way. Solana mobile stack developer, people give us like, why don't you concentrate on this or that or whatever? But the team is not that big. It doesn't take that much. I mean, it's just about the manufacturer taking the conscious effort to securely put it into the secure enclave. But it doesn't take that many developers. Internally, the team that programmed the things I don't know, at one point it was like 3 developers. I think it's grown to a little bit more than that, but it doesn't take an army of people. The thing that takes an army of people in a lot of these is a lot of the app development, a lot of the unique experiences and stuff, and user flows and all that stuff. But these building blocks for the secure pieces of the secure enclave and the wallet adapter, so you can communicate with it. It's pretty simple, very highly secured. So it takes some very thoughtful engineering, but it's pretty simple program.
Yeah. If we look at, like, let's say 3 years in the future, and many people has, let's say, the Solana phone, some games are gonna be built on it. How would kind of the user experience be?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's going to be a lot of consumers by then. Like, thinking of like something like Steppen had something available to us. I think the idea is that that those people will just all have apps, and so their entry is, I download a new app, I log in, I do my thumbprint, I do my Face ID, whatever it is, I log in. That's it. You actually don't even need to go through a single sign-in on Google anymore. It's actually easier in this paradigm than something else. That's
it seems
today, contrast it to today, I either have to set up some crazy wallet in my unique app, or I have to get my user to redirect back from like MetaMask Phantom, whatever their mobile app is, or even worse, if they don't have that app on their phone yet, they have to get their user to download a different app and create a key in a different app. So yeah. So we went Solana. This is why it's like so extreme, and like why like this needs to happen in some form, is that this secure enclave Solana mobile stack way is literally better in a lot of ways than the status quo, depending on the way they want to do it. By status quo, I mean Web 2 status quo, and the way they have it right now is way worse than Web 2 status quo. Yeah. So it's a big shift.
Would it be fair to say that if you are like right now a traditional gaming company or any kind of application, you're already just building your product, your game, would it be kind of easier to, let's say, plug in the blockchain component of the economy, cryptos, NFTs, whatever you want to have in it, just by having already a platform like the phone?
So I don't think the phone fixes an economy per se. So it does. So the wallet adapter does make it so the interface is smooth, whether the user has the Saga phone or the secure enclave or not. So it's hopefully it abstracts a lot of that away from the app developer. They can just kind of use that interface and they'll figure it out. We can go into those user flows, but it should, from the app developer, make it much more clear what they have to do if there's a wallet present versus not. Now, again, if there's not a wallet present, I have to do a bunch of weird stuff today, but the secure enclave part should be very easy. So, but the game economy stuff, that's much harder. Harder is probably not the right word. There's the same complexity as Web 2 complexities. People are still earning stuff in games or not. Or, there's a lot of decisions around it. Basically, I guess I'll take a step back. The complexities around game economies take place for what people actually earn by playing. If you're just buying something that somebody else is selling to you, or if you are buying something like a skin that is just like extra to the game, it's like a vanity item, there's not nearly as much complexity around the economy of the monetization. The complexity comes if the game itself is yielding something. And this is the same case in Web 2. I mean, balancing those economies so somebody doesn't just farm a bunch, because whether they can put it into real world cash or not, some people find value in it in MMOs. That's why, or in game economies, that's why people play them. So it use the same principles. It's just plus because people can now buy sell for real money. So you get farmers, and there's a financial incentive, even more than just gold sellers or something like that. So you can still use the same principles. And I've talked to a lot of people how to do these things. There's things about how you can dynamically adjust how much is getting yielded for certain things, how to drive activity, certain places in your game, based on usage and what you're trying to facilitate and the outputs of these things. There's a lot of stuff that you can do, but you really have to have the levers available in your game I think the thing about Solana is the blockchain integration part, where you're just what you do to mint the tokens is pretty easy. So it leaves you more room to do these other this game design aspects, which is always the hardest part, no matter what, cryptocurrency or not. Designing the fun game and building the fun game is always going to be the harder part. I mean, if you're using a chain that you have to do a bunch of audits and stuff like that, you're opting in for a little bit of a hard time. Which is why I'm so bullish on like Solana's ecosystem. It's because a lot of these things are just done for you. Like I mint NFTs and my tokens on Solana today. I instantly get monetization around the world. I get all these other things it takes this complexity away from me. The only thing I have to figure out is exactly my strategy and my game design around it. But I was going to have to do that anyway. So yeah. So for me, I think like, especially, I mean, I think already today, many game designs are easier to do in Web3, except in 100% it's just easier to do in Web3 than if they were going to try to do it in Web2. So, and I think that the number of games that falls into that category is going to get more and more and more over time.
Absolutely. Yeah.
It's easier.
Yeah. Because first of all, it takes a lot of time to create a game and, that it looks good and people have fun playing it. Then you have to think about the economy and how, make a sustainable economy. Sometimes when you introduce tokens and, Web3 kind of stuff, you just have the economy on steroids. So if there is a problem there, it's just going to get rushed in and will go to zero pretty quickly. When you were saying like building on top of existing protocols, from a company perspective, do they need some sort of partnership with the previous protocol, or they can just go there and plug in their?
No. These are composable, permissionless protocols for the large part. There might be some of them that have some gating, but for the large part, they're permissionless. You might want to still talk to them so you can figure out if there's some custom thing they want to do, like how they would do that configuration or something. But for the large part, especially like think like Metaplex, not that many people talk directly to Metaplex. That's a good thing. They just mint their NFTs. So, and that's getting easier to every other to the other protocols.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So Solana is setting up very well for gaming and DeFi. I see gaming in a certain way. You can actually, at the moment, like the games we have right now on crypto, they're not on chain. They just have very little interaction. This because at the end, it's gonna cost you too much to kind of have all the game on chain. What kind of game do you see kind of implementing a lot of on-chain activities by using Solana?
So I think when you put something on chain, you really have to ask yourself, what is somebody else going to be doing with this data or this functionality? Or am I just putting like logs on chain, So I think that's the main thing that the game has to decide. And we see some explorations that are pretty interesting. Like Laddercaster is entirely on chain. There's a chess game on Solana that's entirely on chain. And then there's what's called Race Poker, where a lot of it is on chain, at least like the way that they do the signatures and stuff. And a lot of those are really, really neat. And basically only possible on Solana. I think there is a chess game on Ethereum, which is hilarious. It costs like $10,000 to play or something. And well, it depends on the congestion, right? So my thing is, I think today the easiest way of doing it is like the things that are valuable, like the things that you want to have people to kind of have transactional value for value transfer. I think that's what makes sense to have on chain. And then, so if I'm going to arrange some sort of like community event where I want to pay for an entry fee and then you'll give some prize at the end or something, whether it be a tournament or some event or just some fun thing. Yeah, that should probably be on chain. You don't have to trust the organizer too much. You can just see the code, or trust somebody else or read the code yourself, whatever. It's all permissionless. So those kinds of things I think make sense to put on chain. But yeah, like WASD, I'm moving left, I'm moving right, like the whole game loop. I think forever, it's not going to really make sense to put on a blockchain. That's because why would you need to know that real time on a state layer? Like you can probably do some things with it, but it creates so much of a friction that it doesn't seem like worth it. What I think you're going to see is not a blockchain, but just some sort of decentralized compute engine that's just going to compete with like AWS backends and stuff that are just cheaper because they meet the performance characteristics and they can run the game. And then that thing can be an oracle to on-chain activity that can produce some things that something else uses potentially for like a live feed or something like that. And that way you can have stuff like that or live games be put on chain. But today you're kind of limited yourself to like turn-based games. That's why the things I just named to you are all turn-based. You can do some turn-based games. You can do some other things.
That sounds right. Well, I just want to wrap it up a moment. Sometimes I want to ask if you have any advice or anything that you kind of pick up along the way that make you a better person, or you just learn something that you might want to share with us.
Oh, I think the one of the main things, especially in crypto, is really openly consider multiple perspectives and give yourself multiple sources of information. I think there's a lot of consolidation of information sources on our social media today. And once you see something outside of it, like your natural, like, I don't know, protective instincts, base Maslow's hierarchy of needs is very protectionist. And if we tie our belief systems to that, it can be really limiting on how we open up our minds and learn new things. And so I would say, especially in crypto, it's even more so because there's such a financial ties, unfortunately. I mean, there's positive and negatives to that, but yeah, it's definitely there. So recognize that you have that bias in you. So get multiple sources, try to understand why other people might be thinking the way they do, understand their perspectives, or try to open your mind why this, there's trade-offs in this and this and this, and why they might have done that. And you may not agree with everything, but at least you have more understanding.
Yeah, let's keep the mind open. If people want to get in touch with you, where they can find you?
Oh, I'm basically at Tamgros, TAMGROS, on basically all platforms like Twitter. I don't know.
Perfect. Thank you very much again for spending time with us today, and I'll see you in the next episode. Goodbye.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me.